Imagine stepping into Belgium in the 1920s, a country just beginning to piece itself back together after the horrors of World War I. The devastation was real, the scars were deep, but Belgium wasn't about to stay down for long. With its industries like coal, steel, and textiles, Belgium had been one of the powerhouses of pre-war Europe, and by the late 1920s, it was starting to get back on track. But there was no denying the challenges. The economy? A work in progress. Belgium had racked up some serious debt from the war, and inflation and unemployment were still very much lingering. The country was largely reliant on exports. Coal, steel, and machinery were its bread and butter, especially for its neighbors like France and Germany. But here's the kicker. The country was split right down the middle. On one side, you had the industrial powerhouse of Wallonia, where French was spoken, and on the other side, you had Flanders, which was more agricultural and Dutch-speaking. The disparity between the rich south and the more rural north? Yeah, that created some serious tension. But somehow, through all this, the Belgian economy started stabilizing, slowly but surely. Now, let's talk innovation. Belgium had been at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution, and by the 1920s, it wasn't about to let that legacy fade away. The steel industry was still going strong, and coal mining and textiles, major players in the economy. But here's where things get interesting. Belgium was starting to dip its toes into new technology. Car manufacturing? Yep. Belgium started to get into that game, producing cars not just for local markets, but for international ones too. And don't forget about electricity. Belgium was advancing in electrical engineering, which meant their factories were becoming even more efficient. Sure, Belgium wasn't exactly leading in aviation and cutting-edge technology, but it was laying the groundwork for future progress. But let's be real here. Politics in Belgium in the 1920s was kind of a mess. You had King Albert the Rijn at the helm, still respected for his leadership during World War I, but the country was dealing with some serious internal strife. The Flemish and Walloon communities? They were in constant tension. Wallonia, the industrial south, was wealthier and more politically influential, while Flanders, the agricultural north, had its own set of concerns. And if that wasn't enough, Belgium's political system was fragmented. There were all these different parties, Catholic, liberal, socialist, and coalition governments were constantly shifting. No wonder things felt unstable. Still, Belgium tried to maintain its neutrality in Europe, even as the world around it was rapidly changing. And then there was the military. You might think Belgium was just sitting pretty after the war, but no, its military was still recovering. Fortifications like Fortress Belgium were still a part of the defense strategy. And while Belgium wasn't directly involved in any major international conflicts during the 1920s, it made sure to stay vigilant. The focus was on defense, especially with Germany so close by, but overall, the Belgian military was trying to keep a low profile while making sure it was ready for whatever came next. Socially, Belgium was split right down the middle. On the one hand, you had Wallonia, this industrial, French-speaking region that was richer and more urbanized. On the other hand, you had Flanders, rural, Dutch-speaking, and economically struggling. This divide created serious social tensions. In the South, you had a growing working class, and socialist ideologies were beginning to gain traction. But in the North, it was a different story. You had a more conservative, Catholic-influenced society, and the working conditions in the industrial towns were brutal. Long hours, low wages, and substandard living conditions. That was the reality for many Belgians. Poverty was still rampant, especially in industrial regions. But over time, social reforms began to take shape. Better housing, better sanitation, and a slowly improving quality of life for the working class. Still, life expectancy wasn't exactly high. And then there's the question of who actually lived in Belgium. The majority of people were either Flemish or Walloon, but there were also smaller immigrant communities, Italians, Germans, Jews, who had settled in Belgium in the late 19th century. And while immigration wasn't a major issue in the 1920s, Belgium was still dealing with the complexities of its colonial empire. They had control over the Congo, and that fact definitely influenced their international relationships. Of course, when you talk about Belgium in the 1920s, you can't forget the people who had real influence. King Albert I, for one, was a huge figure. After World War I, his leadership was crucial to rebuilding the country. Politicians like Emile van der Velde, a prominent socialist, and Gaston Eyskens, a leading Catholic, shaped the political landscape. And let's not forget about the Catholic Church. It had massive influence, especially in the rural areas, playing a role in everything from education to social welfare. Now, let's get into something a little darker: crime and underground movements. It's true, Belgium wasn't exactly teeming with organized crime, but there were definitely smuggling and black market activities happening, especially near the borders. And politically, the 1920s saw the rise of far-right and far-left groups, some of which were pretty extreme. Belgium didn't have the same level of political violence as other European countries, but the seeds of future extremism were definitely there. On the cultural side, though, the 1920s were a pretty exciting time for Belgium. Art, literature, film, it was all growing. Belgian artists like René Magritte were making waves in the Surrealist movement, and literature was flourishing too. Ever heard of Georges Simenon? He created the iconic Inspector Maigret in the 1920s, and his books would go on to become global hits. Belgian cinema was starting to find its footing, and jazz music? It was spreading across Europe, influencing Belgian musicians and making its mark on the cultural scene. Religiously, Belgium was overwhelmingly Catholic. The church had its fingers in a lot of pies: education, politics, social services. There were smaller Protestant and Jewish communities, but they didn't have the same influence. And while Belgium wasn't exactly a hotbed for mystical practices, Catholicism's grip on social life was unchallenged during the decade. When it comes to folklore, Belgium had a rich tradition. The Flemish had tales of supernatural creatures like the kobold, a house spirit, while in Wallonia, the legends were full of knights and medieval heroes. Catholicism influenced these stories, but you also had fairy tales and tales of saints that shaped the popular imagination. It's clear that, even in the post-war period, these myths played a role in shaping Belgium's national identity. And of course, we can't forget about the historical events that defined the decade. World War I was still fresh in everyone's minds. The Treaty of Versailles had forced Germany to pull out of the German-speaking regions of Belgium, and the country was left with the heavy task of rebuilding. Tensions between the French and Flemish communities were still simmering, and the economy was still recovering. But by the end of the decade, Belgium was finding its footing again. As for the stereotypes, well, Belgium was often seen as neutral, bureaucratic, and orderly. It had a reputation for being a peaceful country in the heart of Europe. And let's not forget about the chocolate and beer. Belgium's products were regarded as some of the best in the world, and the country's internal divisions, though real, didn't overshadow the world's image of a hard-working, organized, and somewhat reserved nation. So, there you have it. Belgium in the 1920s was a country of contrasts, trying to heal from the wounds of war, balancing political instability, social divides, and a rapidly changing cultural landscape. It wasn't an easy decade, but Belgium was making its way back to a place of influence and stability in Europe. Thanks for tuning in to The World as We Know It, and joining me in another chapter of world history. As always, there are more detailed notes in the description, and we welcome any requests or recommendations in the comments section. If you found this video helpful, entertaining, or educational, please consider liking this video and subscribing to support our channel. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video.